Welcome everyone to the Year 9 to 12 Information Evening. This is the first session for tonight. We actually have the Year 9 and 10 evening, and I'm actually going to MC this for this evening. I first of all would love to welcome up Nick, who's going to actually give us our welcome to country. Thank you, Nick.
Kaya Wanji, Nanjur Jini, Nanjur Waki. Hello and welcome. I'm happy to see you all here tonight. Also happy to be speaking with you tonight. My name is Nick Abraham, and my family connections are Abraham, Bennell, Humphrey, Hume, Mippy, Worrell, Nettle, Harris. And we're connected to many parts of Noongar country. Whadjuk, which is the Budja we're sitting on here now, but also connected to Ewart, which is to the north of Whadjuk, to Ballarong, which is to the east of Whadjuk, also connected to Wilman, which is to the southeast of Whadjuk, also to Bingerup, which is to the south of Whadjuk, and Wadandi, which is to the south of Bingerup. Also take this opportunity to acknowledge my Kura Martin Williams, my wife and in-laws, and they're also connected into Wilman, which is southeast of Whadjuk, Canang, which is south of Wilman, Goring, which is east of Canang, and Menang, which is further down south. Also take this opportunity just to acknowledge the other parts of the Noongar Nation, Amagu, which is just north of Ewart, Nagi Nagi, which is just east of Ballarong, Wajiri, which is just east of Wilman, Nunga, which is south-southeast of Goring, and Bibbulmun, which is further down south. However, Bibbulmun has a flow throughout Noongar country, and you may hear Noongar people talk interchangeably between Bibbulmun and Noongar, because it has that connection. Nijun Noongar Budja, Nijun Noongar Warranty. So this is Noongar country, this is the Noongar language that I'm speaking. Kuranala Kobang, Nar Noongar Mort, Noongar Bridia, Kuranijanat Modikwinjin, Nunukjini. So I'm just paying respects to the elders past, present and emerging, but also acknowledging and paying respects to your being here today. Being here today to give me an opportunity to tell you a little bit of history about this place that you may not be aware of. So I'm going to tell you a story that goes back at least 100,000+ of years, but unfortunately I've only been given 5 minutes to tell you that. So hopefully you would walk with me on that little journey. And the story I'm going to tell you is not about blame, and it's not about shame, but it's about understanding of the Budja that we're sitting on here tonight. And as I bring you into this space, I would like to ask you 3 questions. And when you answer these questions, answer them as loud as you can in your head, so no one else can hear you other than Budja, country, and world of the sky. We got that? So your first question, just let the Budja and the world know your name. All good? The next question, just let the Budja and the world know who's your mob and where you're from. Bear in mind you have connections to here, you could have connections to other parts of Western Australia, other parts of Australia, even other parts of the world. But just let the Budja and the world know who's your mob and where you're from. All good? Third question, the answer to the third question can only come from your core, your heart. And that question is, what's important to you? And hopefully that's the central part of your being. And I'm going to leave you with that. So when Noongar people were given our knowledge through the oral tradition, as passed down from our grandmothers, our grandfathers, our mums, our dads, and our Noongar bosses from long, long ago. And when they're telling us these stories, mainly around the campfire, but when they're telling us these stories, there's something that they're not saying that we have to listen to. And we don't understand what they're not saying until we get a little bit more mature. But what they're not saying is Mirajini, use your eyes to see. Dwangni, use your ears to listen. Kart court courage, use your head and your heart to understand. Understand about your country, understand about your culture, understand about your people, understand about your values, responsibilities and purpose. And they break it up in a couple of key little things that hopefully will help you understand. And the very first thing they teach us about is our mora. Our mora is family, mum, dad, pop, uncle, aunties, brothers, sisters. All the in-laws and all the different levels of relationships to each and every one of those. It was also one of our laws of who we could and couldn't marry. We couldn't marry close bloodlines. We had a system in place of our skin grips that prohibited that. Now there's a modern word for that, it's called eugenics. If I remember on this journey, I'll come back to that word eugenics about keeping bloodlines pure. Next, the old fellows taught us about Noongar Biddy. No direct translation between Noongar and English. So Noongar's a people, Biddy's a path of being on. Giving it more of a common name, culture. What is culture? I'm going to give you a couple of definitions of what I think culture is. You may agree, and you may even add your own. But for me, culture is about values. Culture is also about language. And through that language, it gives you identity and belonging and beliefs and spirituality. So if you think about that, language, identity, belonging, beliefs, spirituality, there could be a modern word or two for that. Faith or religion. So Nyungar, like many Indigenous cultures all around the world, have their own form of faith or religion through our culture. Next, the old fellows taught us about our Kardinja. Now, Kardinja is our knowledge system, where the old people understood, knew the relationship between the sun, the stars, the moon, the plants, the animals, the waterways, the seasons, and how we live sustainably in those environments. If anybody want to learn about the sun and the stars and the moon and the plants and the animals and the environment today, they'd have to go to a place like Curtin University to learn about science. My old people had that knowledge of how we looked after this land. But it was interesting with science, because it was a scientist by the name of Francis Colburton in 1883 first termed the word eugenics to his audience in a place called London. And that was a scientific study in 1883 about keeping bloodlines pure. Yet my people have been practicing that for many, many generations. Next, the old fellows taught us about our court wearing. Court is the art, wearing is the spirit. Bringing them together, it's our well-being. And the old people taught us about our bush foods, our medicines, our sites, our ceremonies and our social interactions. And they knew when we were out of balance physically, emotionally and mentally how to use this system to bring us back into balance. And that was a health system. And the old people taught us that these key elements are connected to our budja, our land. Because they knew if we look after country, the country would look after us. This one here represents our British, our elders, because it was our responsibility of overlooking the system and making sure that our laws and our customs were never broken. So that was functioning on this land for many, many generations, where the sun would always rise in the east and set in the west. The moon would eventually rise in the east and set in the west. And when our old people pass and they leave this place, they move on to the next part of the dreaming. They move to a place called Paranup, which is over the west where the sun sets. And the only time that ever return is in our dreams and our subconscious to give us guidance and support of maintaining our laws and our customs. So that was functioning on this land for many generations. Unfortunately, in the early 1800s, some people came, and they came from that way. And they came down the Derbarl-Yerrigan, and they came to a place that we now know as Elizabeth Quay. And the leader at the time of that part of country, on the other side of Elizabeth Quay, was Yelagonga. And he seen these people come, and they came down to his camp, and he couldn't make sense of who they were. Because they looked pale, they spoke differently, they behaved differently, they dressed differently. But they came from that way. So Yelagonga thought the only thing possible for him, if they come from that way, they must be my younger ancestors' spirits people returning. What do I do? He had no template on how to deal with them. So he done the only thing that he thought was possibly for him. Because they looked tired, they looked worn and they looked weathered. So what Yelagonga had done is given up his camp around there at Elizabeth Quay, and he moved to another camp that we now know as Lake Munga. And he left the younger ancestor spirits people there to rest, recover and return. They rested, they recovered. Did they return? No, they stayed. They stayed and they saw this system and they ignored this system and they imposed new laws and customs onto my people. And immediately everything that was important to us all of a sudden was illegal and outlawed. And straight away we had a disruption to our elders and our British and our governance system. We had disruption to our morts and our families. We had disruption to our culture and our language. We had disruption to our knowledge system of how we looked after this land. All of a sudden, we had no say in how our land was being divvied up. And we had disruption to our well-being, our court weird, because we couldn't get access to our bush foods, our medicines and our sites to practice our ceremonies and our social interactions. Because all of a sudden, we were trespassing on Crown land and private property. And these key things disconnected us from our budja. And that's where my community is today, picking up the pieces of disconnection and disruption. This disconnection and disruption that people sometimes call colonisation. I just want to acknowledge that colonisation happened in many parts of the world long before it arrived here and long after it arrived here. In fact, it's happening in the world today, and we have to look at the morning and evening news and all the way through to see where it's happening in other parts of the world. But I can only talk about the impacts of colonisation out of my country, my culture, my people, our values and our responsibilities and purpose. Nan mort weir nujinyin, nala boring waki nujinyin, nan mort nujinyin, nunuk nujinyin. So despite all this disruption, my people's spirits are still here. Despite all this disruption, our spirit stories are still here. Despite all this disruption, we are still here. Throughout this disruption, you and many others have come. And my ancestors would be angry with me if I did not welcome you to the country but tell you the real history of this place that you may not be aware of. And I just want to say, Mama Jinaralaya, Bodoran Jini. And I just ask those good spirits to walk with us and guide us so that we can understand what was, what is, but what could be. What could be depends on us as humans. We're all humans, no matter what part of the world we come from. We're all humans. And sometimes in this world we forget that. Or systems make us forget that. But we're all humans. And we all have our own individualism and our values. But we're all humans. So hopefully we can move forward. And I just ask the good spirits to look on you and keep you safe while you're here tonight, and while you respect and understand and appreciate in our country. So thank you, have a good night.
Thank you so much, Nick, for coming today. So, first of all, let's get started, shall we? A little bit about me. My name is Julie. I am a Future Student Engagement Coordinator. I've been working for Curtin for a very long time. What I love about doing the Year 9 to 10 parent presentation is that I myself am a parent of a Year 10 student right now, so I know exactly how you feel, and I have a daughter that's actually going through this process. So for all the students here tonight and out there in online land, welcome. Hopefully some of the information that we'll talk about tonight will actually be very useful. So what we're going to cover today is we're going to cover why to come to Curtin. I'll talk a little bit about the Curtin University experience, the different pathways of getting into Curtin, what an actual ATAR is. I'll go into a little bit of an explanation of what that is. That's really helpful for Year 9s and 10s and also for the parents as well. We'll talk a little bit about subject selection. That's quite an important time in Year 10 right now, where you're making choices, and we'll talk about that in a bit of detail. I'll mention some scholarships so you're aware that they are available for later in the next couple of years. And we're going to have our students talk a little bit about their experiences, and at the end of the session you can ask me questions as we go. So a little bit about the university. We're the largest university in WA. We have over 40,000 students at this campus alone. I mean, we have campuses right around the Indian Ocean rim. We've got a campus in Dubai, in Singapore, in Malaysia and Mauritius. So we're really fortunate. And we also have a Kalgoorlie campus that's predominantly for our students who do mining courses either in engineering or science, but you can do some regional health experiences as well there. One of the great things I love about Curtin is that you learn the theory and then you get to put it into practice. So it's a theory practice model, and it works really well when it comes to trying to learn things, I think. And I myself I'm a Curtin graduate. I graduated about 10 years ago or so from a Bachelor of Psychology. One of the great things I love about it is that there are lots of industry links. We've got industry links with multinational companies, local communities, and also international companies like NASA, for example. If you're a mechatronics engineering student, you can apply in your final year of your course and actually go off and do an internship as part of your honours degree, for example. Some of the information about the uni, well, we've got 5 stars in a lot of different areas, but I just want to mention that we have for student demand, for teaching quality, and also learning resources. And we are listed as one of the top 1% of universities worldwide. And we are ranked number 1 when it comes to graduate employment, which is very important at the other end when you're actually finishing your course. I can talk from personal experience. My daughter finished occupational therapy last year, and one of her pracs that she did in her course last year, she had to do an 8-week prac in a paediatric area. They loved her so much, they even offered her a job straight away. So that was pretty good. Now she's working as a graduate this year. So I'll talk to you a little bit about some of the lingo that Curtin has and universities in general. When you first come to Curtin, you will actually do what we call an undergraduate degree, which is a bachelor's degree. And one of the great things about doing a bachelor's degree at Curtin, that you pretty much just have to do that for the majority of the courses that we have. And then you can go out and work in the industry after that. There are 3 different areas that maybe you'll have to go on to do further postgraduate study, and that would be if you want to be an architect, you need to do a Master of Architecture. If you want to go on and do something like psychology or a clinical psychologist, you'll have to do a Master's for that. And if you want to be a dietitian, you'd need to do a Master's of Dietetics. But everything else, including medicine, engineering, the lot, you can actually go and get a job straight out after your bachelor's degree. We also have the opportunity of doing double degrees, so it means you can mix and match and actually get different skill sets. A lot of jobs out there require lots of different skill sets these days, and so actually having 2 different areas makes you very employable. I get a lot of questions about what's the difference between doing a major or a double degree. Well, a major is something that you specialise in and you become an expert in the area. If you need registration requirement, you need to do a major in that particular course. So, for example, if you want to be an accountant, you'd need to do a Bachelor of Commerce and majoring in accounting, so you can then go on and actually work as an accountant afterwards. But the double major means you can actually sometimes major in 2 areas and be recognised in 2 areas. So if you want to do accounting with finance, for example, you could actually work in both of those spaces with that. The difference between the minimum ATAR and the guaranteed ATAR is that if you actually are applying for a course, students in the room, in Year 12, and you're actually trying to get into something like psychology, for example, that is a guaranteed ATAR of 70. So if you get that ATAR and you pass English, you're in the course, no problem whatsoever. But you could be trying to get into a course that's a little bit more competitive, maybe medicine, for example. And our medicine has a minimum ATAR of 95, and that means we can't consider you for this course unless you've at least achieved a 95 ATAR, but you might need a lot more than that and other components along with that as well. The other thing that we get a lot of questions about is unit, and unit really is just the subjects that you're all doing at school. The unit is actually the same sort of thing. So it lasts usually a semester, and you usually do about 4 units per semester, but they're just your subjects that you do. And Curtin does have quite a few prerequisites for some of our courses. I'll talk about this in a little bit more detail when we go into the different areas. But what we do encourage you to think about, both as parents and also the students in the room, is if you can start doing subjects that are relevant to where you want to go to in uni, then it's so much better with your transition to actually have the background knowledge before you finish school. So that's why Curtin actually encourages you to do prerequisites, so you can start aligning your interests at school so you can actually then continue on at university level after you've completed Year 12 straight away. We're going to talk about some pathways. The ATAR pathway, and I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about exactly what that means, but that tends to be the pathway that the majority of students tend to go to if they're going on to going to university. But it's not the only way. We also have a fantastic Uni Ready enabling program. And we have stuff out here in the expo that if you want to go into more details about finding out about Uni Ready, it's a fantastic enabling program that enables you to be able to get all the background knowledge that you need to be able to cope with the course that you're going into once you finish that particular enabling program. We also have some Indigenous programs, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on as well. Portfolio is a great possibility. Sometimes you're really gifted in one particular area. You could be really good at art, for example. And so the idea is if you go off and you're doing art and you're showing you've got the capacity and the ability to do it, you might not necessarily have the academic component, but as long as you have the English component, plus you show that you've got the ability to do this course, portfolio entries is a good pathway to actually use as well. And we also have Cert 4. So a lot of students actually go into possibly doing a VET program in Year 11 and 12. And if that's the case, if you do a Certificate 4 and have separate evidence of English, you'll get an ATAR of 70. Sometimes people decide, oh, look, I'm going to go off and maybe go to TAFE, or you could go to Curtin College, for example. That's a private institution here on campus. And you can actually do a diploma, and that will actually make you eligible as well to come to university. So and the great thing about diplomas and advanced diplomas is that you can get some credit for recognised learning of what you've done, and that can actually sometimes shorten the course that you do here at university level and make it a little bit cheaper as well. And lastly, Everyone needs to pass English for our particular university courses here at Curtin. So if a person's struggling a bit with their ATAR English, Lit or English as additional language or dialect, they don't get the 50%, they can always sit the written English section of the STAT and get 140 out of 200 as a minimum, and then they will be conceded in English. So there's always things you can do in case things quite don't go to plan through your year 11 and 12 experience. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about ATAR. ATAR for us, and it's for all the unis really, is that it's actually based on your year 12 results. So what happens is you get 50% of your actual school assessment or your child's school assessment. That will be, the exams, the assignments, everything you do in year 12. That is actually worth 50% of the ATAR for that subject. And then the WACE exam at the end of the year provides the next 50%. So what we do is put the two together, and then how we work out an ATAR, the Australian Tertiary Entrance Rank, admissions rank, is actually we get the top 4 subjects and we use those. And if you happen to be doing either maths methods or specialist, then you'll get a 10% loading on that subject added to that as well. If you happen to be doing a language other than English, like French or German or whatever, then you'll get a 10% loading added to that, whether or not you use those subjects as your scoring subjects. So technically speaking, your score could be out of 430. And then the rest of the year population is compared to you or your son or daughter, and then that's where you rank. You are compared to everyone else, and where you fall on the whole system on the curve is what your ranking ends up being. So that's how we work out the ATAR. Now, that's a lot of information, but what we have here and what we have for you all here is the Year 10 guide. The great thing about this is it's got some really, really useful information in it. In the front, it talks about if you like certain subjects at school, you might like these types of occupations and courses at university level onwards. And in the back, which I think is really useful, it actually talks about all the prerequisite subjects and the desirable areas that you might want to do when you're in year 11 and 12 to help you on your way. So pick up one of these if you're here in the live audience, and you can definitely get a link, I think, for the online publication for this as well. So I'm going to talk about some of the different areas and just mention some of the subjects that I think are really useful. So for example, if you're thinking, I love the idea of health, if you really care about people, if you love maybe human bio, you could actually be good at maths, you like chemistry, for example, because there's a bit of biochem in some of the health courses, then maybe a health area is for you. And doing those sorts of subjects in year 11 and 12 will be really useful for you. If you are actually very interested in the creative area, then obviously there's going to be courses and subjects like media that you could do in year 11 and 12. You could do the visual arts, for example. There's lots of other different areas like obviously the English area or Lit if you're interested in the English written language, for example. So there's many different things you can do to enhance the areas that you like. You might like drama, for example. And if it's your favourite subject, as the students in the room, you should think about doing it because you should always do subjects that you enjoy doing. So make sure there's subjects that are useful, but some subjects that you can enjoy as well. You might actually like the idea of maybe numbers and number crunching and things like that. And you might enjoy the idea of looking at risk management and maybe becoming an actuary. If you don't know what that is, look it up, find out. Actually do a bit of an investigation. The great thing about the business area is that we've got some great courses. They're a Bachelor of Business Administration, there's Commerce, and our brand new course, Bachelor of Innovation. So if you really want to make a startup, you could be interested in looking after the environment or sustainability, you could definitely look at those sorts of options with that. And so if you love your English, you like economics, you might like accounting next year, and go and do some of those subjects, that can actually make it really great for you going forward and give you some background knowledge. And lastly, if you love your maths and science, you should really think about a career in science or engineering. So there's some amazing things to do. If you're capable of the maths, look at doing methods and specialists. If you enjoy maths, but you don't quite, it doesn't come as easy, maybe look at applications. There's chemistry and physics you can look at, human biology, there's integrated science. There's so many different subjects you can look at if you're in this space. And for a lot of our courses, we do encourage you to do some maths and science, especially in this area. And lastly, if you're Indigenous, then we have some amazing Indigenous courses that you can do. So for the Indigenous Australian, if you're interested in maybe the health and medicine, you could do the pre-medicine and health course. If you're interested in doing something in science engineering, you can do the science engineering enabling course. And for the ones that don't have prerequisite requirements, the Indigenous Tertiary Enabling course is possibly right for you, because that's only a 6-month course, but the other two are actually 1 year in length. All of the enabling courses, by the way, are free. They don't cost you anything to actually do them other than your time. And lastly, I just want to mention this very briefly. We do have a lot of scholarships. So there is our scholarship staff out you can talk to later in the evening. But I just want you to just keep it in mind, look in year 11 and 12, get onto our scholarships website and just see all the possible scholarships and assistance that you can get from us to make life a little bit easier financially. Here's some examples of the types of scholarships that we do have. There's excellent scholarships that you don't even have to apply for, you just have to put Curtin as your first preference, and we're doing well academically. And then there's the principal's recommendation. So if you're thinking of going to Curtin, or your son's thinking of going to Curtin, or daughter, then make sure you tell the school, because they can nominate you for that. The last area I just want to talk about is some of the support we have. Every new student will receive a mentor when they first start at Curtin, and that will help you with the transition from school to uni. So parents, don't get too worried at this stage. We also have some fantastic support services through our accessibility advisors. So if your child does have a learning challenge at all, get in touch with the accessibility team, and they will help to make sure that your student and your child actually make sure that they don't actually have any disadvantages that will block them from achieving their potential. But there are many other great services that Curtin has to offer. And we do encourage you to take the idea of maybe studying abroad. You can either do it in a semester with an affiliated university, you might want to do a semester even one of our campuses around the Indian Ocean Rim, or possibly even doing a study tour during one of the breaks. So there are many great options open to you. It could be going to the Maldives and doing an internship if you're doing a commerce degree with a finance major, possibly. Lastly, I just want to finish up and just talk about the importance of actually thinking about what your child really wants. If they can find a job that actually enables them to do something they're really passionate about and they're going to get paid to do it, that's got to be the ultimate. So get out there, talk to your child, talk to your parents, talk about what you really, really enjoy. Make sure that you maybe even shadow someone for half a day. Year 10's a great time to do some work experience, so I do really recommend that. The other things I would say is we're always here to help you, so you can always get in touch with Curtin Connect, and we have open days every year. So the year 9s and 10s and parents, it's a great opportunity to come on the 24th of March next year to come to our open day, and it's usually from about 10 to 3, and we do thoroughly recommend that you come out and visit us again. So now what we're going to do is actually bring the students up so you can actually find out a little bit more about what their experiences are about. Okay, so what I might get you to do, girls, is actually introduce yourself. Tell me what you're studying and what year you're in, obviously. Maybe a pathway, and talk about how you got here in the first place and what you love about the place and what you enjoy about it, Curtin. So we'll start maybe with Tamsin.
Hello, my name is Tasmin. I'm studying a double degree of law and commerce, majoring in accounting here at Curtin. I'm in my 4th year, so I've got one more year to go. My entry into university, I did 5 ATARs and then a certificate. But I didn't go straight into university. I did actually take a gap year as well, which is something I do highly recommend. What I love about Curtin is just the opportunities that it provides. So I've been involved with the Curtin Volunteers, which is something that was really close to my heart. I got to go to primary schools and help children with English as an additional language focus on reading and learning and comprehension skills, just because English is my second language as well, and that's something that was close to my heart. And I also got to join a club, which is a great social aspect that we have here on Curtin. It's a great way to meet like-minded people, to get involved in lots of events, both professionally and socially.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm in my final year studying high school teaching, geography. Woo! I also did 5 ATAR and a certificate, but I did come straight from school to university. Something I really like about Curtin is I really like people, so I like being in person doing things. So I really like the option that we have, especially in a teaching degree, where we have classes where we can talk to our other classmates and discuss kind of the topics that we're doing and talk to the teacher as we go through. And also, if you do a humanities degree at Curtin, you don't have exams. I recommend.
Hi, my name's Eva. So I'm in my 3rd year of my advanced science honours degree. I'm studying chemistry. So I came in with 5 ATARs straight from school, so pretty normal. In chemistry, you do have to do exams, unfortunately. But something I enjoy specifically about chem is probably the community feel of the chemistry building, because there's connections from 1st, 2nd, 3rd, honours, PhD, and all of the lecturers as well. So if you're looking for a really good support system, I definitely would recommend. And there's also the Chem Club, so very chemistry oriented over here. But there's also different opportunities like the Go Global. So I went to Malaysia at the end of last year. So that was only for 2 weeks. So if you don't want to be gone for a whole semester, I would recommend it.
And Ruby, last but not least.
Hello, my name is Ruby and I am in my 4th year of occupational therapy here at Curtin. I got into Curtin the same way, so I did my 5 ATARs and then I went straight from year 12 into university. What I love most about studying occupational therapy at Curtin is the diversity that's offered. So within my degree, I possess the opportunity to learn in all the different areas available to occupational therapy. So that's your paediatrics, neuroscience, physical rehabilitation, and a whole range of other areas. The lecturers in each of those fields are leaders in those areas and they're very passionate and it really motivates you. So that's something that I've really valued about my time.
Adrian, do we have any questions?
Yes, we do. All right. Do you guys mind talking a little bit about what your timetables actually look like? How many hours generally you're on campus each week?
So my timetable, so here at Curtin it's quite flexible. You get to choose roughly what days you want to come into. So I've done it that I come in every Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, but you can also just schedule them all on the same days, which is something that I've done as well with past semesters. My contact hours right now, because I'm doing trimesters at the law school, is only 10 hours. So that's pretty good.
For humanities and teaching, we have very limited contact hours, so hours that we actually have to be in class. For each semester, I will usually have about a maximum of 12 contact hours. Usually it's more like 8. So I can often, some people will just smash that out in a day, but I will often also take a couple of days here just because then I can kind of do my thing in class, but also spend time on campus to study or meet with other people and get the full university vibe.
Doing chemistry, depending on if you choose chemistry-based electives, your contact hours could be a little bit more because of the lab time. So your contact hours in terms of that respect could be anywhere from, say, 25 to 30 hours a week. But if you enjoy the lab, then that's great. And you learn lots of lab skills that can definitely be transferred into industry. And that's kind of the thing they look for, that you're competent in the lab sort of making your own decisions, following experimental, that kind of thing, and safety as well, big important there.
So, due to the social nature and hands-on nature of studying occupational therapy, a lot of our classes are in person. So a lot of the time with OT, we've got, so per unit, we usually have 2 classes. So we've got usually a 1-hour theory class, which is where we kind of reflect on what we learnt in our lectures and the theory behind everything. And then we'll have a 2-hour hands-on class where we're actually getting to put that theory into practice, which is great. There's a few other units where it's a 2-hour class or a 3-hour class. Now that sounds daunting, but I promise we get lots of breaks and we have lots of activities to do. But the really great thing about Curtin is you do get to select your timetable. So for me, what I like to do is I like to have one day where I had just no classes for study, and then another day where I put a lot of classes in one day, just to be able to navigate my work-life balance and have that ability to still work casual jobs and also be able to commit time to family and friends as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much, guys. I think we have time for one more question. If you could give some advice to your Year 10 high school self, what would it be?
Well, so I did already do it, but I really cannot stress how amazing a gap year is. So prior to doing my gap year, I'd actually applied to study occupational therapy and I'd been accepted to do that. I'm now doing a law degree and a commerce degree, which is very different. And it was actually during that gap year when I did that change and I realised actually this isn't something that aligns with me and that aligns with my values. So definitely recommend a gap year. You're able to find yourself and just take a break because you go from primary school to high school. It's nice just to take a year off before going into even more study.
I would recommend doing subjects you enjoy, especially if you don't know what you want to do kind of further down the track. I really enjoyed my upper school experience because I just did subjects that I wanted to do. And luckily, because I did know what I wanted to do, they were appropriate for the university course I went into. But aside from that, one thing I would suggest is kind of forming a study habit and actually studying. Because once you get to university, you do need to put more kind of individual time into your course and work. And I found that the hardest transition coming into university because I was lazy in high school. So I would recommend really forming that study habit early so a smooth transition can happen into uni.
Specifically for my experience, let's say, I took myself pretty seriously from year 9. I was serious year 9. So my advice would just be to not take yourself as seriously. Studying is important, but I had very little life back then. So as much as you should follow your interests and do the things you enjoy and that kind of thing, I would urge you not to lose yourself in it. Because you also need to focus on your mental health, your state, your physical health, that kind of thing. So just don't get lost in the study, please.
Yeah, alongside what the other girls said as well is really use this time in year 9 to year 12 to form some of those study habits. Have a go trialling different methods of study, so trialling maybe using palm cards or verbalising just to get an idea of what works best for you, and that will really support you in your transition into university. And I agree, just enjoy your last years of high school, work as hard as you can, but also make sure that you're looking after yourself.
Thank you, ladies. I think we're out of time, so we're going to ask you to depart. Maybe if you can pass the mics over to us, that would be great. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, and now it's time to open up questions from the audience. If you would like to ask a question, we've got we've got Mario here with a roving mic, and you can ask the question if you have any. Otherwise, we might have some online questions maybe. Anyone? Did I actually explain everything so well? Oh, here's a question. Thank you.
Hi, I just wanted you to explain a little bit about early offers, the Year 11 entry.
Okay, so the question was about early offers. For early offers, we currently have for the Year 12s for this year is that we will look at early offers for students in certain courses that we have an open number that we can offer. So there are some courses that have quotas that we will not be doing early offers for, but for the Year 12s for this year, we will look at it from a Year 11 Semester 2 result, which we can actually get from the Tertiary Institution Service Centre and work that out for you. So that's fine. That's if you have Year 12s here in the audience right now. And you can put in an application through the Tertiary Institution Service Centre, and we will be getting in touch with you from the 17th of July onwards for early offers. It needs to be the first preference out of your possible 6 preferences for us to be able to offer an early offer. Does that help? Thank you.
Question from the online audience. Just to clarify with the alternate pathways, if you have a Year 10 student wanting to do a Cert 4 going into Year 11 and 12, can you just reiterate how you go about using that to meet the entry criteria?
Okay, so the question was about other alternative pathways for the online audience, just in case you didn't hear it. So there are many ways of getting into university these days, and the ATAR pathway is not the only way. If you want to, you can go through a VET pathway and actually do up to maybe a Cert 4, Certificate 4, and that with separate evidence of English will actually make you eligible and will actually give you a 70 ATAR into getting into a lot of courses that we have at Curtin here. There are other ways. I mentioned before the portfolio method as well. But there's also, you might want to do, if you have uni-ready in schools, the possibility of actually looking at that option of an enabling course when you're at Year 11 and 12 level. And there are around 70 schools in the state that actually have uni-ready in schools. So you might want to just check with your school to see if that's an option as well. Any other questions? There's a few more. There's one down here, actually, Maria. Sorry, you're going to have to... There. You're getting your steps up there.
Can you please explain more about, like you told in one of the slides, that you get 50% loading from the school and then 50% from...
Okay, so yeah, this is of how the ATAR...
like if your school is, like if the students in the class, they are not doing well, is it going to affect your results as well?
Okay, so the ATAR and how we work it out, it is actually 50% of the school assessment, but it's also 50% of which will be the actual WACE exam at the end of the year. Both of them are scaled. So I suppose if the whole school's doing really well, then they will go well in the course. So they'll do well, and they probably won't be moved too much when it comes to the scaling. So it really just depends on how the whole population of that school goes really when it comes to scaling. So it's not just the individual there, it's the group that we look at. If you want to know more information about scaling, you can always go on to the Tertiary Institution Service Centre website, and there is a section in there that talks about it in great detail. But basically, getting your ATAR, it's your top 4 subjects, 50% is the school assessment that's scaled, and 50% is the WACE exam at the end of the year, and that is also scaled. And that's how we work out what you're going to get. Plus, there's the loading on top of that for those 3 areas that I mentioned before. And you don't have to count those subjects in your ATAR to get the loading. The loading automatically happens. Does that help? Okay, thank you. I think that's it from me. Thank you so much for coming tonight. But the online audience, I hope you've enjoyed your time and asked lots of questions through Slido. And all the people here in our lecture theatre tonight in Norm Dufty, thank you so much for coming tonight. We actually have an expo now, so if you'd like to actually go out and ask individual questions, we're here to help. If you are here for the next session between for the Year 11s and 12s, you can go and stretch your legs for a bit, and then we will call you back into the room once it becomes ready to go. Thank you so much.